So, I come from a background of private equity, investment banking, real estate development. So when we develop projects, mixed-use communities, so we get to meet all the stakeholders, have meetings with them. One of the things which really motivates me to be involved in blockchain is meeting people like yourselves. Because in my daily, regular life, I would never get an opportunity to meet such motivated people who try to disrupt different industries. That's one of my main reasons why I've been involved in it for so long now, is the type of people you meet in blockchain events or people who come for investment in the blockchain industry. And they're so motivated and I'm really blessed and thankful that we are industry, well, not experts, but just industry veterans, and the empowerment that everyone feels when they get involved in blockchain, because a whole different world appears, and not necessarily for our age group here, but for our younger age group. So if you talk to your kids or like 12 years old, 13-year-olds, and they don't even understand, even 8-year-olds, they don't even understand the concept of money anymore. I was giving my son 100 dirhams, and he's like, no, I want your credit card. I was like, why? He wants to buy Fortnite bucks. So even the kids coming on, they don't really have a concept of cash, and they are so easily adaptable to being able to transfer cryptocurrencies. So I think the main reason why I'm involved in blockchain is to meet people like yourself and connect and get motivated to disrupt different industries.
So I mean, in my perspective, I look at the simplest institution in our society is marriage, right? When you think of marriage, it's a contract, right? In some cases it's a contract, in some cases it's an institution. And if you look at ancient societies where you could get married just by the presence of the people, which was consensus-based. And now that same model is coming back into the digital age. And blockchain enables you. Why do I need a certificate of authorization? Why do I need authority from someone? Why do I need permission? Why do I need to, the trust arbitrage, right? I call it trust arbitrage, is that I pay taxes and the government takes it, and the government takes me and it takes like a protection fee. And for me, when I saw Bitcoins and when I read the Satoshi paper, it was quite evident in the first couple of months that the whole system is broken. The present-day banking system has been in crisis. Look at the timing when Satoshi launched his paper. It came out October 31st, 2008. 2008 September, Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns, boom, vanished. And people lost trust in the system. And it's clearly evident, and then the people came together under the pseudonym or group of people, I don't know, I'm not too sure. But they came together and said, how about we try a social experiment? And the white paper gave the prescription. And if you look at, it's an algorithm, right? So it's like if you think of Satoshi Nakamoto as Euclid or Pythagoras, who came up with their theorems. Euclid said like the shortest distance from point A to point B is a straight line. Do you know who Euclid is? Have you met him? Have you seen him? But what he said was proof. And proof of work becomes extremely important. Same thing with the Pythagorean theorem. You can use the theorem for whatever ways you want, but you can't deny it, you can't restrict it, you can't stop it. And the only way, in my opinion, is self-regulation. You know, it's like you've been so accustomed to getting instructions, getting regulations, but now if we had to be, each individual is a sovereign. If you take that concept and extend it further and say that, what is a digital asset? You know, is your data? Who owns the data? Do I own my data on Facebook, or Facebook owns my data? Does the government of India own the data? Who owns it? And because my data is being used, it's being profited on, but I'm not seeing a single penny. So how do we rectify such a system, you know? And that's where cryptocurrencies become a very important element in discussions about blockchain. And if you look at cryptocurrencies, it can be treated as a digital asset. And you know, you have different forms of it, in forms of ICOs, STOs, I don't know what other words. And now there is a conflict which is clearly evident happening between the regulators and the regulated. You know, and now the regulated have a voice, because the network effect of the internet, you know, in 2000 everyone said, all the press said that the internet is dead, the dot-com bubble is gone, you know, there will be no more internet. Look what happened. Amazon, Google, Facebook, Netflix, and now ICOs and STOs. And I still personally don't have a very clear understanding of what STO and ICO is, because I haven't been following it, but I've been following the political trajectory around it. Every time there's a political election, or in some country or whichever, especially in developed economies or you know, big economies like India and China, any social political shift impacts the price of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. So I would like someone from the panel to see, how do you value a digital asset? On what basis do you value it? You know, how do you decide that a unit of data is worth $5?
Well, that's, how do you actually determine the value of currency today? What is the basis that we establish the value for the rupee? What is the basis that we establish the value for the US dollar? These are really extraordinarily important questions, because it's essentially not really backed by anything other than a strong arm, right? The entire monetary system, if you really look at the entire monetary system as a whole, it's entirely backed by faith. There's no other major component that holds this system together today. And when you talk about Bitcoin, you talk about blockchain, you talk about digital assets, it's based on math. It's undeniable. It's algorithm based. Right? This is extraordinary. This is extraordinary. So you look at the central banks, they're issuing currency unlimitedly, correct? I mean, this is the case. What is the standard for the issuance of currency today with the central banks? With Bitcoin, you actually have control of issuance of currency. There's a minimal amount of Bitcoin that will ever be minted, right? Produced. That's extraordinary. That means inflation control. That means less price manipulation. So I think, you know, when we look at the system as a whole is corrupt. It's failed. it's failed, and that's, you know, where the Satoshi white paper really resonates, I think, with everyone on this panel.
You know, there are bad actors everywhere. You know, when in the late 70s, the United States dollar came off the gold backing, because now it's backed by the credibility of the people of the United States. So, and US dollar has become the base currency on a global level. What I think the new way, like our friend he just mentioned, like in 2000, everyone thought the internet is dead. Today, we're IBC Group. Please connect with us on LinkedIn. We're investors in over 200 cryptocurrencies, which funnily we call them all shit coins now compared to altcoins last year, because everything has dropped by 90, even 97% of our investment. So we've lost 97% of our investment in the different cryptocurrencies we've invested. What that's showing us is it is a sort of a cleaning up process that's going on right now. And no longer can you just come up with an idea like the .com bubble was. You just came up with an idea and you raised hundreds of millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars. Same thing was happening with cryptocurrency. Someone came up with an idea, immediately he starts thinking he's worth $30 million. For some reason that $30 million mark is what majority of the psychology of people think that their idea or company's worth. While in the private equity and the venture capitalist world, a startup which has a great idea and potential is worth anywhere from $1.5 million to $2.5 million as a startup. So how is a cryptocurrency project 10 times bigger than that? One of the things you guys should definitely check out is we hired extensive talent like investment banking, stock market analysts, to really do research in the cryptocurrencies that we were investing in. So we probably sometimes invested more money in doing due diligence than we would invest in the particular company because we wanted to get it right. But guess what? We got it completely wrong. We lost 97% of our value. We hired the best talents in the world who were going to analyze these companies. And the market sentiment is what driven this cryptocurrency altcoins down. And we believe that now it's now where we will see is the new unicorns come out, the projects which will probably sustain itself over the time. And at the same time, the reason for this panel is STOs. STOs are very different from utility tokens because they're backed by a particular asset or a particular equity. So it doesn't necessarily as volatile as other cryptocurrencies compared to STO. And STO being able to be regulated by the government, it opens up capability of institutional-based investments in it. So pension plans can now come into it. You know, investment banks can come into it. And this is something that is evolving, and we are talking to various governments all around the world, and they're putting in regulations in place to let the big money come in. Because till now it's just like, you know, evangelists, angel investors who are really investing in cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, okay, I'll just take it back one step because I think we're going to the assumption that STOs, ICOs, etc. Are fairly well understood. So, you know, in addressing the question of value, and my experience is very similar to yours. Because we look at startups as a venture builder. We take companies from early stage and grow and commercialize them until a sustainable point. We've done that in the blockchain space for the last 6 years. And last year we were, very similar to you, we were very much involved in, in building companies and the regulatory framework in the United States to bring them towards a more robust ICO, which is initial coin offering status, right? So you've got ICOs, STOs, securities token offerings, sometimes ITOs, initial token offerings. So there's a bevy of different things out there. But in terms of looking at value, we too have engaged different types of economies, made all sorts of models, and at this space and said, how do we assign value to different types of coins or tokens or tokenized assets? First, you need to categorize each one of them. So you have utility tokens, you have securities tokens, and then you have payments tokens. And each one of them, in a different type of use cases, have different potential. Today, for example, you have a payments token that most of the payments token can be volatile. What does it mean if I sell a token to Josh for $1 and then he can only buy back the goods and services at 50 cents due to the volatility? It means that people are not really using it as a payments currency. So efforts in the stable coin environment or decentralized stable coin environment become very important. And these things are playing out in front of us. On the utilities side, you have rewards tokens or casino tokens, gambling tokens, etc. And you have non-fungible tokens, which are effectively tied to something that is non-fungible, like a game card or something like that. These things are actually growing, and there's a lot of research being done in there, and therefore their value is different to that of a payments network. In the securities space, securities token offerings, you have the tokenization of a share of profit, assets, anything monetary at the end of the day. And in this environment, that's probably the largest growth happening right now is STOs, where you've got regulators coming around and building frameworks together with young, innovative companies to actually launch almost like a process where tokenization of shares, tokenization of profit sharing, etc. are coming along, right, in a current regulated environment. So each one of these have obviously different values. But one thing that stands out of all of the work that we've done, we've assumed utilities having, if you have 1 billion tokens, for example, and it represents goods over a lifetime, and you're selling all the goods today, you're effectively selling your inventory today. So from a tax perspective, it becomes revenue, so on and so forth, right? So, but the most important thing that we found was early stage companies in disruptive environment deal with enormous volatility. And what that also means is it's like having a big dude jumping in a small pool where the value and the volatility sloshes around. If the same dude jumps in the ocean, it doesn't make a ripple. So what's that sea around us is community. Decentralization is building communities that provide that pool of liquidity. And ultimately, these things you can't really predict. Last year, our funds made 35,000% return. This year, we're down almost the same as you, so we didn't really move anything. But eventually, it will start weeding out projects, and over time, what happens is you get the good ones, and you get a long tail of different products, right, that are not really successful, but the top ones will be the new big companies, the new Google, the new Facebook of this world. And that's why, from an investment perspective, we're in this industry as well. We want to see these innovation come out, and we want to see it come out of places like Africa, which now can be unlocked for everyone to join a global financial system.
Just to add on to that, this is my first time in Mauritius, and Mauritius is considered like the gateway to Africa. So Mauritius is poised in a very similar way like Malta, but even better, because it's got the future at its beck and call, which is Africa. So if Mauritius and the government of Mauritius back blockchain investments and regulations, I think Mauritius could be a global icon for the entire world to follow, because the entire world is looking at a better, more efficient way for, at least for money transfers right now. So this is a very unique position. I think all of you guys and us are here today, is we're at a sort of a beginning of the world of blockchain in Africa.
Yeah, taking that security tokens question further, raising capital via security tokens opens up a whole new type of capital raise that is somewhat a hybrid between private placement and public listing. Can you explain how this will affect institutional capital, retail capital, and how is this kind of capital raise compared to the current method of crowdfunding?
Well, we currently do mainly investments to take a particular company on the public markets. So we participate in private placement, in Reg S, different investment schemes in the United States. And different countries have different ways that they do it. And mainly it's based around the concept of taxes. So different securities, different things are regulated because they want to protect the end user. We believe that security tokens is one of the only ways that we can get institutional capital in this space. Because institutional capital are these trusted nodes or these trusted people who we all believe in and we give our pensions to, or we give our schooling funds to, or these are massive trusted bodies which manage capital for a lot of people on a global level. All these people are not in the blockchain space as of yet, and as soon as they get on in the blockchain space, you will see the growth in it on a global level. In terms of costing, it costs a lot of money to do initial public offering on the stock market, and comparatively, it's cheaper to do an ICO now. But last year, ICO became more expensive than even an IPO. So what does that tell you? It tells you that it's a more expensive way to do a public fundraise than even an IPO. But it has completely changed in the last few months. So this is, if we can get regulations in place, create efficiency in terms of pricing, to empower a young entrepreneur or a young startup or new startup to raise funds in a cheaper, more efficient way, it is going to completely disrupt the market, and it will open up that young guy's ability to go and harness institutional capital.
But let me follow up. But do you think that the beauty of ICOs, for all its flaws, is that the entrepreneur has to give away minimal equity. Like today, if I want $2 million for my startup from a venture capitalist, he will take no less than 25 to 30% of the company. And do you see that as a true empowering part of the ICO market and the attractiveness?
Well, see, when people come to us, people pay any amounts of money to like different investment bankers, brokers, to come and access people like us who can give them capital. So it is very important for us to get a vested interest in that particular cryptocurrency, because last year we were not necessarily taking invested interest. Why were we not taking invested interest? Because we were investing in cryptocurrencies. We believed it get listed on Binance or whichever cryptocurrency exchange, and then we will be able to at least recover our investment and profit on the top. So we were not really, we were investing in them, but we were just like hands-off investment. Now, if we can get invested in them in terms of getting equity, in terms of getting 25% or 30% or equity in the particular projects, now we're vested in. Now, our vested in gives the particular company all the resources that we have behind us, such as analysts, such as lawyers, such as accountants, and such as people who've done it before and who have been successful. So even though empowerment won't be the same thing like someone just comes up with an idea and raises all this money, it will be a more systematic and process-oriented way for them to raise money and get proper buy-ins.
Sure. I think if the question is particularly related to STOs, security token offerings, I think very similar to what Karam said. At the end of the day, you have a number of entities, innovation, etc. And the goal is to always have disruptive or at least innovative companies that meet the market. So by opening up and facilitating the access to capital, you're effectively facilitating the access to innovation on one side. But something that's really interesting that's happening in the token market is that you have utility tokens, right, which is a thing, where the raise or where the sale of token effectively acts as a binder to bring together their consumers or their future consumers or people that believe, the community that believe in that product. So effectively bootstrapping the commercialization of their product immediately. So, and we see this through a number of chat rooms, etc. So we need to really distinguish, I come back to this, we really need to distinguish. On the SDO side, it opens up access to institutional investors, making them feel more comfortable to something that they actually already know, and have regulatory sort of clarity around their investment so as to reduce their risk. On the other side, on the utility side, it's really about building a consumer base or fast-tracking the consumer adoption of a decentralized technology. What we're talking about is tokens on the STO side that is generally in the United States at least available to what we call accredited investors, which is your sophisticated investors over here. So it facilitates that where they would not have had a chance to participate in a venture that VCs usually would see, they now do have the ability to participate. This comes with, with risks because they are not accustomed to the high-risk environment that happens at the early stages of companies. And I think in terms of regulation, that's where we focus a lot of energy in terms of investor protection. The rules of the game in investing in startups and investing in blue-chip companies are completely different. So there is some sort of fine-tuning that effectively needs to be done in terms of clarity for investor protection in this area.
Yeah, so I would add my comments, particularly from the VCP standpoint, is the access to liquidity. In traditional PE VC models, you're typically vested for a period of 5 years, whereas with tokens, you have access to virtually instantaneous liquidity. The question is whether or not that is underwritten, and from a regulatory standpoint, and particularly dealing with banks, insurers, underwriters, do they have the protections on these assets by which they can actually underwrite these assets to guarantee that liquidity in the market?
So that takes me to my follow-up question, It's like, many people would argue that your traditional educated investor may have no exposure, no understanding of how the crypto and the ICO markets work. And someone who has absolutely no understanding of the traditional markets but has an understanding of this understands the technology behind it, but he may not have he may be much more savvier than your institutional investor. So how should the governments decide who is qualified to invest via security tokens and when?
That's a very deep question. I mean, I've had discussions with various governments and various ministers of finance and on a global level, from very developed economies like the UK and Malta, and less developed economies globally. I think people were investing in cryptocurrencies, sophisticated or not sophisticated, from this concept of greed or the concept of being able to make money. I have come to an understanding. I was just recently in London. I was discussing something with the government over there, and what we discussed was we need to create a way to empower small and medium-sized enterprises. Even in the United States, even though there's Google, Facebook, Netflix, etc., the basis of the economy is small and medium-sized businesses. So for any economy to thrive, we need to empower small and medium-sized entrepreneurs. And one of the best ways to empower them is giving them access to liquidity. In terms of from who are able to invest, today it all revolves, especially securities token offerings or STOs, they will be considered securities. So there's very deep rules in different countries which come under the security, like in the United States, they come under the Securities Exchange Commission, which regulates all the securities. My discussion with the SEC has been also very interesting is, SEC gives an opportunity today for you to preempt anything. So you can go to the SEC and say, hey, I'm thinking of doing this security offering, and they will give you some sort of feedback, and then you go to the lawyers and accountants, and they'll say, okay, we need an investment offering memorandum, we'll get, and we can sell it to accredited investors. One of the things we are trying to do is that as soon as an STO raises funds, and it gets listed on one of the cryptocurrency exchanges, which is regulated under the government as an exchange, as soon as they get on the exchange, the retail investor gets access to it. So maybe the security token offering doesn't open up itself to a retail investor until it gets listed. But the listing process should be very quick, and it shouldn't be like what CZ or any of the other owners of cryptocurrency exchanges are charging fees, and how can we mitigate those fees completely, trying to get access to the liquidity, and the exchanges, instead of charging money for listing, they can just make money on the transaction fees. So maybe it could be a two-step process that we discussed is, let's raise money from accredited investors on a private placement basis, and then list it immediately with very little fees and stuff, opening it up to the world of retail investors.
Yeah, one of the issues that I see with the accredited investors participating in early stage ventures is that in the US it's fairly high in terms of the barrier, 250 grand in terms of revenue or $1 billion worth of assets. The issue that you have is the accredited investors get to participate in the future of the world, leaving the rest of the people that are effectively lesser inclined with wealth to actually, even if they pinpoint a particular area, to be basically left behind and get the seconds effectively on the open market. So the rogue person in me basically says, we need to have some guidelines to allow, like the Jobs Act did in the States, to allow the smaller end of town to actually participate under more increased rules. And those that have the ability to make losses and effectively not bankrupt themselves to go through the same accredited process. And the timing, from what Karim said, the timing is really important, right? Because if it is actually immediate, and if we make sure that the accredited investors do not participate with a 90% discount, right, so that to dump the market later on, if we basically have a one price, an opening price, and an exchange immediately, then you could effectively open it out to a broad range of people. And the other thing that it does is it allows the venture to breathe and prove themselves a little more, have a little bit more community, a little bit more strength before actually committing that process. So what I would say would be, like the States, you have a 12-month lockup for accredited investors to actually get their tokens issued, allowing the company to grow enough. And once it is issued, it's issued at the same price that everyone can effectively participate. So that's my thoughts there.
I think from a regulatory standpoint, it's entirely based on form and function. So if you have a system of asset that functions like a currency, then it's a currency. If it functions like a security, then it's a security. If it functions like a commodity, then it's a commodity. And this is something that I've continuously advocated. So in essence, digital assets are really nothing new. It's a matter of how they actually function. So recognizing how these assets actually function is key to regulating and creating policy by which they actually enter the market.
Yes. I mean, I'm not very well versed with the whole SEO regime. I have been thinking about it, and one of the questions that came up to me was, should a government adopt a single model for SEO allowance, or should it allow the entity to choose an SEO model, which is, say, for example, Malta has some regulation for SEOs, and Mauritius has a different set of regulations. Should the entity be allowed to go regulatory shopping, as I'm going to call it?
But regulatory arbitrage is a process, right? For example, a token sale in the United States would do SEOs in the US, set up an extra entity overseas in the right jurisdiction to raise utility on the other side, so as not to breach the laws of specific countries. There is one thing that we need to remember: we are still very early, and effectively prescribing something may be the wrong thing to do. You need to, in my view, allow the ecosystem to merge around some leeway and some clarity, yes, but also not shut down and be tunnel visioned into something that we may later on find out was not the right aspect to do, and later on, push token sales to different jurisdictions. About a year and a half ago, we said Mauritius was in a very good place. I think it still is, in terms of offering clarity to token sales. For example, they had a sandbox regulation license, which effectively is the same concept, right? Tell us what you're going to do, and let us learn with you. Let us not stop on innovation. And through this process, we'll allow ourselves to view and see what is effectively needed out there. Because today, you launch a blockchain company or a cryptocurrency company, from day one, you are global. Whether you want it or not, it is a global ecosystem. So let's think global, let's see what the strength of each particular jurisdictions are, and let's mold it around what the people require at this particular point in time. Let's not forget that this industry is growing rapidly, and that we also have a lot to learn.
And the governments are also, like different countries, depending on different political regime, they're also utilizing, I'm not going to take the names of the countries, but they're also utilizing as a political vote. So by sometimes saying that, it's being used for money laundering, or it's being used for, and there was a study done in which they realized that literally 0.00% of Bitcoin was really effectively being used for money laundering or issues which are issues. And so in some countries it's being used more on the political side, that to garner interest or garner votes or garner support from the different industry players. And there are no sizable cryptocurrency players who are interested to affect change in those countries, so they're just letting those governments operate the way it is. It's very unfortunate to see where about $500 to $600 million of OTC transactions take place on a yearly basis. That country illegalized cryptocurrencies just last week. So, and it was done from a perspective of harnessing, votes or support from different global agencies. So it's got a political angle to it too, which will finish off, because no longer can a government today stand up and say, I'm going to make internet illegal. The entire world or the entire population of that country will be laughing at them, right? But today a government can come up and say, blockchain is illegal, or Bitcoin is illegal, or cryptocurrency is illegal, and people will still be like, okay. Today no longer government can illegalize the internet, So this is something that is going to evolve over time as the industry grows.
So I'm generally quite libertarian, and if I'm an idiot and I make a mistake, I should be held accountable for my own action. Right? I don't necessarily believe that government should intervene. However, I'm also a realist. And, given Mauritius' position in the global market today, it could definitively become a market leader, not just in the current space, but as the space evolves. So when we talk about digital assets, today, ICOs, SCOs, that will largely migrate to include the tokenization of existing assets. And I think that's where we need to start thinking forward and looking at Africa for the potential to tokenize, for example, in-ground assets, create free flow of trade, reduce cost of infrastructure, even going to micropayment solutions like our friend Sean is doing in South Africa, a very fantastic project. So, on the one hand, yes, regulation is there. You have to sort of comply with, the central bodies, the central authorities. Would I rather see an open global solution? Yes. I mean, I'd rather have a global unified standard by which we can all operate and operate clearly to create a better world for everybody.
So just a quick add to Dinis Guarda. But this is what he added on. This is one of the best things that I think everyone in the blockchain space has a social conscience compared to other industries. We're not in this purely to make money. We are in this to make money, to disrupt, and have a social create social change, which I think after 2008 crisis, everyone wants a sort of a social change in every sector, be it health, be it finance, be it legal, because everything is evolving at a very quick stage. So one of the best things about blockchain, I believe, is that we are all here to affect change in a way that our own perspectives think are good for the overall society.
I could have just ended it better, so our time's up. So,
probably. I would say something really, really short. Along the lines of what you said. We're past the stage right now where adding blockchain to your company name makes your valuation 20x. We are looking at something really tangible, and some of the companies that are going to come out over the next year and a half, the SEO movement, etc., is really fundamentally going to shift the way that we currently do business. It is not about blockchain, it is about decentralization. And if you understand that, I think, and take this away, I think this would be a great start if you're thinking about a venture, if you're wanting to get funded, or if you're wanting to effectively be part of this new wave that's coming in. There's only a few different types of innovations, such as this that's happened before, right? Electricity, computers, internet, blockchain, cryptocurrency, and the consensus system around it is something that you should watch out for. And also watch out for decentralization, community out there. These are the telltale signs that you are on the right path.
thank you.